Welcome back to ReelRewire. Today we are diving into a universe where the apocalypse isn't just a disaster. It's a live-streamed spectator sport, and the gods are watching. What would you do if you woke up tomorrow and realized your entire reality had been permanently overwritten by a web novel, and not just any novel, a brutal, unforgiving, apocalyptic survival epic spanning over 3,000 chapters? Now, imagine you are the absolute only person on the entire planet who actually stuck around to read the ending. Meet Dok-ja. His name literally translates to reader, and for the past 10 years, that is all he has been. Dok-ja is an ordinary, severely underpaid contract worker grinding away at a soulless job at Microsoft. He has no money, no social life, no family to speak of, and absolutely no grand ambitions. His single, solitary escape from a miserable reality is a highly obscure web novel called 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse, or TWSA for short. Today is his last day at work. As he sits on the Seoul subway next to his painfully perfect, highly successful co-worker, Yu Sang-ah, he swipes his phone screen and finally reaches the final chapter. It's a completely hollow ending. The main character survives, but the world is dead. Feeling a strange mix of emptiness and gratitude, Dok-ja leaves a comment for the anonymous author, known online only as TLS 123. But here is where the story hooks you. The author actually replies. They thank Dok-ja for his decade of loyalty. They tell him the story won't be free anymore. It's about to be monetized. And they send him a file containing the entire novel. Before Dok-ja can even process what that cryptic message means, the train violently derails. Sparks fly. The lights shatter. The emergency brakes scream like dying animals. The world as he knows it abruptly ends. When the emergency lights flicker back on, the passengers aren't greeted by rescue workers or police. Instead, hovering in the middle of the carriage is a floating, glowing, horned creature. This is Ba-hyung, a Dok-ja. To understand what is happening, we have to slow down and explain the core lore of this universe. In this reality, the apocalypse is essentially a cosmic reality TV show known as the Starstream. Powerful, godlike beings, historical figures, and myths known as Constellations watch humans struggle through deadly trials from the heavens. If they find a human's suffering entertaining, they donate digital currency called coins. Ba-hyung is essentially a sadistic Twitch streamer, and humanity is just his latest content drop. With a sickeningly cheerful, high-pitched voice, Ba-hyung announces that Earth's free trial has expired. A holographic blue screen pops up in front of everyone's faces. It's the first main scenario. The objective is chillingly simple. Kill 1 or more living organisms within the 30-minute time limit. The penalty for failing this scenario? Your head explodes. Literally. When a loud-mouthed passenger refuses to play along, his head pops like a balloon. The train car instantly descends into absolute feral madness. Businessmen, students, and mothers turn into animals, violently strangling, and beating each other to death just to satisfy the system timer. But Dok-ja stands perfectly still, shielded by a strange, supernatural calmness. The chilling realization hits him. The Dok-ja, the exploding heads, the blue screen. This is the exact first chapter of TWSA. Fiction has become reality, but Dok-ja doesn't join the murder spree. Because he knows the lore perfectly, he knows a crucial loophole. The system simply said, living organism. It never specified that you had to kill a human. He spots a quiet young boy in the corner, Lee Gil-yong, clutching an insect terrarium. Dok-ja steps over the bodies, snatches the box, pulls out a single grasshopper and crushes it between his fingers. Ding! The system registers the kill. His life is spared without spilling a single drop of human blood. Acting fast, he tosses the remaining bugs to his co-worker Sang-ah, young Gil-yong, and a couple of others. While the rest of the carriage rips itself apart in a senseless massacre, Dok-ja quietly ensures his small group survives the tutorial. The timer hits 0. The surviving passengers, covered in blood and traumatized, pry open the subway doors. They step out onto the tracks of the Geumho bridge, expecting to find police or military. Instead, they step into a living nightmare. The Han River below them isn't flowing. It is literally boiling. With a deafening, earth-shattering roar, a colossal sea monster, a level 7 Ichthyosaur, bursts from the murky depths. It slams into the concrete pillars, taking massive, terrifying bites out of the bridge. As the steel groans and the bridge begins to snap in half, Yu Sang-ah miraculously unlocks a stigma, a magical skill granted by a constellation. She weaves a glowing ethereal bridge out of magical threads, creating a desperate escape route. The survivors sprint for their lives toward the safety of the far bank. Everyone runs, except Dok-ja. He stays behind on the crumbling, isolated section of the concrete, staring into the thick smoke. Why? Because he knows exactly who is walking through that smoke toward him. Enter Yu Jung-hyuk, the protagonist of the original novel. But here is the most important tragic piece of lore you need to understand about him. Jung-hyuk is a regressor. Whenever he dies, his timeline rewinds, and he starts the entire apocalypse all over again from day one. On paper, regression sounds like the ultimate superpower. In reality, it's a psychological curse. Jung-hyuk has watched his friends, his allies, and his loved ones die brutally countless times. He has lived through centuries of trauma and betrayal. This has stripped away his humanity, turning him into a cold, paranoid, hyper-calculating killer who trusts absolutely no one. Dok-ja knows this. He knows that if he acts like a fanboy or begs for help, Jung-hyuk will snap his neck on principle. So Dok-ja plays his only viable card. He lies. He claims to be a prophet. He tells the regressor that he knows the future and offers an alliance to clear the impossible, high-level scenarios ahead. Jung-hyuk stares at him with dead, empty eyes. He reads Dok-ja's stats using a special skill, finding them pathetically weak. He isn't convinced. He lifts Dok-ja effortlessly by the throat, holding him over the edge of the shattered bridge. He asks one simple, chilling question. If you're a prophet, how do you survive this? Without waiting for an answer, the protagonist opens his hand, dropping Dok-ja directly into the gaping, jagged maw of the waiting sea monster below. So, the guy who supposedly knows everything is dead within the first hour. End of story, right? Not even close. Dok-ja is swallowed whole, plummeting into the dark, flesh-melting stomach of the Ichthyosaur. And this is exactly where he proves he is playing a completely different game than everyone else. While the highly corrosive stomach acid slowly eats away at his clothes and skin, Dok-ja stays perfectly calm. He summons the Dok-kyebi, Bi-hyong. Now, remember those constellations watching the stream? They are easily bored. They want a show. A guy trying to survive inside the digestive tract of a sea monster? That is prime, exclusive content. Dok-ja leverages this. He proposes a ridiculously brazen, unprecedented contract to the system administrator. He promises to deliver the most viewed, highly rated, chaotic survival stream in the entire universe. In exchange, he demands a 50-50 split of all viewer donation coins and absolute channel rights. Bi-hyong, who is essentially a low-level streamer, desperate for a breakout hit and constellation clout, signs the deal. Armed with his first massive payout of digital coins from his new subscribers, Dok-ja opens the system shop. He understands the item meta perfectly. He purchases a set of massive, magical thorns, activates them, and violently impales the sea monster from the inside out. He claims the beast's magical core, blasts his way out of the rotting carcass, and washes up on the muddy banks of the Han River, completely covered in monster gore. But the apocalypse doesn't care if you're tired. Trudging through the ruined, desolate city streets, he hears a desperate struggle inside a devastated convenience store. Inside, a fierce woman named Jung-hee-won is bleeding out, fighting a massive, grotesque praying mantis monster. In the original timeline of the novel, Hee-won is a nobody. She dies right here on the floor. But Dok-ja makes a choice to actively change fate. He steps in, cleanly slices the monster in half, and saves her life. He knows her hidden stats. He knows she has the potential to become one of the strongest fighters in this new world. He patches her up, carrying her unconscious body all the way to the underground sanctuary of Geumho Station. Geumho Station is a pressure cooker waiting to explode. When Dok-ja arrives, he reunites with his makeshift family, his co-worker Sang-ah, the young boy Gil-yong, and a righteous, heavily armored ex-soldier named Lee Hyun-sung. But they quickly realize the mutated monsters outside aren't the biggest threat. The real danger is human nature. The station has been taken over by Congressman Cheon-in-ho. He is your classic manipulative apocalyptic tyrant. He hoards all the food rations, manipulates the weak, and uses thugs to maintain control. He immediately targets Dok-ja, demanding he hand over his survival coins as a tax, but Cheon-in-ho severely underestimated his opponent. Armed with the intimate knowledge of the novel's politics and character profiles, Dok-ja effortlessly sees through the politician's lies. In a masterclass of psychological warfare, Dok-ja verbally destroys him, exposing his cowardice and turning the desperate mob against their so-called leader. But human politics are cut brutally short. The station's perimeter alarms blare. A massive horde of giant, vicious ground rats breaches the tunnels. During the bloody chaos, Sang-ah is dragged into the pitch-black depths. Dok-ja and Hyun-sung draw their weapons and rush in to save her, but they trigger a hidden trap. They are suddenly pulled into an illusory prison. This isn't a physical dungeon where you swing a sword. It's a psychological torture chamber designed to break your mind using your darkest, most repressed memories. We are forced to watch as the sturdy soldier, Hyun-sung, is paralyzed by PTSD. He relives a horrific military accident where his momentary hesitation got his comrade killed. The guilt is crushing him. Meanwhile, Dok-ja is dragged back to his own personal hell. The system forces him to relive the relentless, brutal high school bullying he endured. It shows the moment he was forced to betray his only friend just to survive a beating. The system wants them to feel completely worthless, to give up and die. But Dok-ja has spent 10 years surviving his miserable life through the sheer willpower of fictional characters. He refuses to break now. Drawing on incredible mental fortitude, he shatters the illusion. He reaches into the darkness, grabs Hyun-sung, and violently pulls him out of the nightmare. When they wake up on the cold tunnel floor, they find Sang-ah and Hee-won standing over their unconscious bodies, fiercely, guarding them from the rats. It's a massive turning point. They are no longer just survivors sharing space. They are a forged team who trusts each other with their lives. The stakes hit a critical level as the group pushes forward to Chungmu-ro Station. The rules of the next scenario are deceptively simple. To survive the night, you must stand inside designated green zones painted on the floor. If you are outside a zone when the timer hits 0, the monsters spawning in the darkness will tear you apart. The problem? A ruthless, greedy man named Gong Pil-do has completely monopolized the zones. Using a powerful constellation stigma, he has set up automated magical turrets around the safe areas. He is charging horrific, impossible rent just to stand in a safe square. If you can't pay his tax, you get thrown to the monsters. So, what does Dok-ja do? He executes the biggest flex in the entire movie. Utilizing the massive wealth he accumulated from his streaming contract, he drops a staggering 113,000 coins directly at Gong Pil-do's feet. He doesn't just pay the rent, he literally buys the station's land rights out from under the landlord. He destroys the monopoly in a single instant, making the safe zones free for everyone, and forces the furious Gongpil-do to become the station's primary line of defense. But there is absolutely zero time to celebrate their victory. The earth violently shakes. The station ceiling shatters under immense weight, and a colossal, apocalyptic boss monster, a lesser fire dragon, descends into the terminal, bathing the area in flames. And right on cue, the regressor, Hyuk, crashes through the rubble to fight it. Here is where the timeline gets utterly terrifying. Dok-ja knows the novel intimately. He knows that this exact fight, in this exact station, is where Jung-hyuk is fated to lose. He is supposed to die here and reset the timeline. And if the timeline resets, Dok-ja's current existence and his newfound family is permanently erased. Refusing to let history dictate his fate, Dok-ja rallies his team. They execute a flawless, breathtakingly coordinated raid. Hyun-sung tanks the hits, Hee-won breaks the dragon's armor, and Sang-ah binds its massive wings with magic threads, setting the beast off balance. But fate fights back hard. The dragon rears up and unleashes a massive point-blank blast of concentrated hellfire. In a rare, uncharacteristic moment of humanity, Jung-hyuk shoves Dok-ja's team out of the way and takes the full, devastating force of the blast himself. The protagonist falls to the ground, charred and lifeless. He is dead. Instantly, the world around them begins to severely glitch and fracture. The sky tears open. The timeline is literally deleting itself because the main character is gone. With mere seconds left on the clock before reality ceases to exist, Dok-ja pulls out a shattered sword hilt and merges it with an ultra-rare item called the Ether of Faith. The weapon erupts into a blinding, radiant blade of pure white energy. With a devastating cinematic leap, Dok-ja slices cleanly through the fire dragon's neck, decapitating the boss in one single, catastrophic strike. The boss is dead, but the timeline is still actively collapsing. Dok-ja drops his weapon and frantically rushes to Jung-hyuk's lifeless body. Because Dok-ja brilliantly let his team do all the actual fighting and only landed the absolute final kill on the monster, the system awards him a hidden, seemingly impossible achievement: the King of No Killing. This achievement grants a one-time resurrection skill. A warm, brilliant golden aura explodes from Dok-ja's hands, washing over the broken, burnt body of the regressor. The red glitches in the air stop. The timeline instantly stabilizes. Jung-hyuk takes a massive, agonizing, gasping breath, his eyes snapping open. He looks up at Dok-ja, the very man he callously threw off a bridge just hours ago, finally realizing that this so-called prophet might actually be the real deal. The heavy smoke finally clears over the shattered, blood-stained tiles of Chungmu-ro Station. It is dead quiet. The survivors are battered, bruised, and covered in ash, but they are miraculously alive. Hyun-sung, Hee-won, Sang-ah, and Gil-yong gather around Dok-ja. They look at him not just as a fellow survivor, but as a genuine leader who successfully defied the cruel system itself. Even Bi-hyung the dokebi floats in stunned, absolute silence as the Constellation chat goes completely nuclear, showering Dok-ja's stream with millions of donation coins in awe of what just happened. Kim Dok-ja walks toward a collapsed tunnel wall, looking out at the ruined, smoking skyline of Seoul as the sun slowly rises. For 10 long years, he was just a lonely reader, helplessly watching a tragedy unfold from the sidelines of a glowing phone screen. But not anymore. He has taken the pen away from the author. He is the director, the player, and the prophet of this terrifying new world. The original story was destined to end in absolute, lonely despair. But with his comrades by his side and the protagonist alive to fight another day, Kim Dok-ja is ready to rewrite the stars. Everything you saw today, that was just the prologue. The true story begins now.